have to say, the hardest part of this project is this final part right here. I've had a hard time deciding what exactly I wanted to do. I had a general idea, but I'm still working through it. And so in this first part of the video, you're gonna see what I came up with to do. And if it doesn't work, I mean, it is just paint. Here is my issue. I wanted to put some moldings in between the tags, where the tags were, and the barnwood frame. Okay, that's one thing, trying to decide on what moldings to use. I don't want it to look overly busy. So here's part of that process of how I decided what I was going to use. First off, I apologize for the footage here. I don't know what happened with my camera. This is the only video clip that had some odd coloring. I've tried to adjust it, but hopefully you'll be able to see. I had to leave it in order to explain. I tried several different pieces of trim. You'll see I finally settled on this rope trim. I think it's the most appropriate for the barn wood frame. Everything else was just too scrolly, too fancy. Plus, I wanted to use the Holly Lane mold in one corner and the trees from, oh goodness, the 2020 release in another corner. And so I needed a simple trim piece, and I needed something that I could put on the end of the trim. I did not want to miter the corners like I normally do. I wanted to have some kind of embellishment that would come to a stop, like at the end of the trim, and basically point toward whatever I'm putting next along the way. You can see here I'm playing with different things. Again, it was way too scrolly. So this is what I finally came up with here. I just wanted to take a moment to demonstrate that when you're using a trim piece and you need more than the length of the actual mold itself, this is what I like to do. I make a long roll with the clay, and then, well, here's the demo. This is how I do it. Now I laid this out and I let it dry overnight. And now I'll show you what happened. And here is why. In the previous picture, you could see that everything was touching, but the clay has shrunken. And I knew it would do that. And all of these things had to touch. So I got it as straight as I possibly could and let it dry here. Nothing's attached. And when I'm ready to attach it, I can make it all a tight fit and then decide on my placement for the tags. And as I said, that was to be expected. I knew it was going to shrink, which is why I didn't glue it together. So that's one issue that I think is resolved. But now I have to decide, what do I want to do to finish these molds, to finish the clay? Initially, I thought I was going to use some watered down Lusterstone the product that I used at the very beginning on the background that I troweled through the stencil. And by the way, I checked, Faux Effect still does sell that, but unfortunately they only sell it in a gallon, and it's outrageously expensive. When I had my store, I sold in quarts and gallons. And I mean, the gallon that I have is 15 years old, but it's still good. So, you know, it didn't cost me anything for the Lusterstone. But anyway, I thought about watering that down a little bit, because you can do that, like up 10-20%, and paint the clay with that, let it dry, and then wax it with the same Sloan brown that I used on the background. But the more I thought about it, and the more I started really studying it, I think it would get lost, too lost. And the frame itself is so rustic. I mean, it is barnwood. You can see there are places in it that have gouges out. So my thought process now is to make the moldings, the castings, look more like wood carvings in the same coloring as the barnwood. I think it would help to blend everything together. It wouldn't just fade away in the background like I think it would if I had used the Lusterstone. Now, I have a product called Retique It that I have used before that you can paint on just about any surface, and it makes it stainable because it's got wood pulp in it. But the type of Retique It I have is really more when you want to use the brown hues of stain. And if you look closely at this barnwood, yes, there's some brown because it's wood, but it's very aged looking. It has a lot of gray and a lot of white on the top. So that means I have to do some faux techniques to make that happen. So that's what I'm going to be showing you. I used to teach faux classes, so I guess you'll get a little bit of a class here. And if it doesn't look right, it's just paint. So I can go back and do something else, the Lusterstone or something else I come up with. I'm going to do them individually, but the first thing I'm going to do is test it. And I'll try what I'm thinking for my technique, and then we'll see. Oh, and I'm also going to try to do a little bit to the frame itself. I mean, it's really, really rough. It is barnwood. But I do think it needs something. It either needs a sealer and maybe a little coloring, a little stain or something, or I may just clear wax it, keeping my hands away because I got a splinter the other day from just moving the frame. Clear wax and then the brown wax. And I think that would help tie what I'm doing with the castings together with the frame. So here we go. After the second textured layer coat has dried, it's time to dry brush on some various colors. I'm starting with a brown. It's just called Real Brown. And the trick to dry brushing are two things. A crummy little chip brush, and it must be dry. So I'm applying the paint very slightly and wiping it off to make sure that there's very little on there, and you just brush in the direction of your grain. You add a layer. You need to make sure that layer is dry before you add the next layer, because otherwise all the colors will just mix together like mud. So the second layer with a new chip brush is a medium gray. The next color is Sand Dune, which was one of the colors that I used to mix the base coat color. After that, I am using a darker gray that I mixed. So there's my test. And I think by the time I clear wax and brown wax the barnwood frame, we're going to be really close. So I will continue.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again with candy canes and silver lanes aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store. But the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of hop-along boots and a pistol that shoots is the wish of Barney and Ben. Dolls that'll talk and will go for a walk is the hope of Janice and Jen. And Mom and Dad can hardly wait for school to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. There's a tree in the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well. It's the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will start, and the thing that'll make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store. But the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. Sure, it's Christmas once more.
Should old acquaintance be forgot and never brought to mind? Should old acquaintance be forgot and days of old lang syne? For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup of kindness yet for days of old lang syne. And here's a hand, my trusty friend, and here's a hand of thine. We'll talk a cup of kindness yet for old lang syne. For old lang syne, my dear, for old lang syne, we'll talk a cup